dares to stand in my way?
Worthless. You do not deserve to live.
Demons, you will not be forgiven!
Worthless. You do not...
Justice to the evil. One strike is enough. My sword yearns. Your destiny. Everything shall fall.